This is an interesting article I was sent in an email, and call attention to this guy's site. It's Henry Marco, um, Marco.com. He's actually Jewish, but he's very critical of the very top Jews in the world. Not Jews in general, because he is Jewish, or whatever he is. And I really don't get into too much reading of his readings, but um, I don't think he's trying to mislead people. Like, my personal opinion is I'm very suspicious of Alex Jones. I don't know what he is about. And this guy gets into a lot of these conspiracies. But some of these things on here click. And I'll just go on with this and just want to see how this fits in. It's really a new article. He goes on to say, a friend of mine who is now, is written by this Gene in Budapest. A friend of mine who is now disillusioned high-ranking member of the Jewish Freemasonry in Budapest has told me what is coming regarding the Greek crisis. Now, every time you mention the word Jewish or Jewish, I don't like mentioning this because a lot of Jews get real nervous, and I don't know what it is. It's almost like a defensive reaction. So just take it for what it is, and I'm just using this as a indication to see what's going on with the European Union. And I'm just going to say a couple common sense things about this, and that's strictly about judging which way money's going and what is actually going on in the European situation. Well, according to this friend of this person who wrote this article, Greece was chosen to play the role of a European Union bankrupt member state in order to create the big problem to which the European Union is going to find a solution soon. Greece was chosen because it symbolizes Europe. And that does make sense. And I don't want to get into much like cloak and dagger conspiratorial things, but I wasn't born yesterday, and obviously I realized that there is a lot of very shrewd chess games that go on at all levels. It could be at the smallest level, and the higher up you go. And the higher up you go, or the more powerful you are, if you want to use that word instead of higher up, the more powerful they are, the more shrewd they are, the more secretive they are. So that's human nature. It's been like that forever. So I don't want to get into cloak and dagger, conspiracy, really crazy out there, but this does make sense as far as Greece being chosen in my mind, because it symbolizes Europe. Greece really is the cradle of civilization as far as Europe goes in the Western world, and nobody in Europe actually cares about these other countries because they don't symbolize, Europe per se, and that would make sense. And I'm going to say something else about that. The European Union is going to find a solution soon. I think this situation actually is contrived because it's like they all owe the money to each other. They had the comedians on there. I think there was some skit about this. If you really look at the debt structure, it's all convoluted. One country owes money to this one owes this one, this one, this one, this one, and everybody on the bottom is getting screwed, right? Well, I think the thing is, it's going to force more, getting rid of national sovereignty of the individual member states in Europe. And we do know that the flagship publication Foreign Affairs and Council of Foreign Relations flagship publication Foreign Affairs writes articles in ways to save the euro. So it's obviously even the Western elite are part of this. And I think the situation is contrived for this reason too. I think the ultimate situation will be like a euro-wide bond, and that was something that George Soros hinted at. I'm going to go over a couple different angles on this though, and I'm also going to put in a couple things where Lindsey Williams said a couple things, because I think he's getting a mixture of truth and disinformation. That's what I think's going on with him. So you do have to look at what he says. The European elites are using Greece to persuade the sheeple, the people, whatever, that if the Greek problem is not fixed, Southern Europe will go bankrupt, which will trigger the collapse of the whole European financial system and thus the bankruptcy of the European Union. So I think that obviously is what's going on. There is actually, every time there's coming up with a solution, there's more debt being added, and there's more that there has to be more and more close cooperation between all the member states, and that is really very difficult to do because if you look at the member states had national borders and different languages because basically these are different peoples that really kind of fought each other all throughout the centuries. If you just figure that out, look at it plain common sense, so they don't really get along that easy. But the game is to force them to get along. That's what I say the simple plain game is. That's why I disagree with what you're hearing from Bob Chapman and stuff. For instance, he'll say that it's all going to fall apart. I think it's going to have a catastrophic catastrophe at one point in time, but there's a solution that's ready, and it's going to be taken off the shelf, and it's going to be presented to people at the appropriate time. And I guess one big hint is one of it is the European-wide bond. Now he goes on to state, you know, I don't know if they're Khazar bankers or whatever the heck it is, but say the top people's main part of the plan is to bring the southern and eastern European economies to a breaking point, as well as to weaken the U.S. economy and collapse the Chinese, Indian, and Russian economies. And I want to look at it this way. There are basically 4 major power groups in the world that are like super strong. I know there's a lot of other powerful people in the world, various countries, but if you want to look at the 4 strongest power centers, it's really the United States and Europe and Russia and China. And China obviously is getting stronger and stronger, and that's something that worries the Western elite, I assume. But there are various camps in the so-called elite. And I want to point out one very simple thing. I know Lindsey Williams talks about he gets word from the elite. Well, obviously, I'd almost be a dead giveaway just from this one little article that came out. Obama's budget eliminates $40 billion in oil tax breaks for the oil companies. The Obama administration, this was as of today, February 13th, Monday, 2012, the Obama administration's fiscal 2013 budget proposal strips away nearly $40 billion in tax breaks for oil and natural gas companies, saying the incentives cost taxpayers too much money, do little to spur energy development. Now, I'm not saying one thing or another. What I'm saying, about the policy, but that pretty much makes it a slam dunk no-brainer that Obama is not in the hip pocket of the oil industry. I think, and something else Lindsey Williams did say that the oil industry elite that he knew, or this one person he knew, says eventually they want to build up the United States again. Now, from my understanding is George Soros does not want to build up the United States. He wants to see the United States very weak. So that's really who was the main guy who put in Obama. So, I think there's a lot of power struggles going on in the United States between various elite, and there's also groups of people between the United States, Europe, China, and Russia. So, I know there's other very strong nations in the world like Japan, and there's also in the Middle East, there's very strong nations. But really, it's kind of the U.S., Europe, Russia, and China. But it looks like this whole deal with the Greek situation, I say it is contrived. And he goes on to one thing, and he talks about the global warming scam. Now, quite obviously, that is a scam. I mean, there's been some pretty obvious weather facts out there that things are getting a hell of a lot colder rather than warmer. But that was behind getting a carbon tax and cap and trade and all that type of stuff. But and quite obviously, this, even though that's some people would call that a conspiracy, it's quite obvious. I think it was a Club of Rome had a meeting about that, and it came out later that there was this they came out, what could make people sacrifice more? Usually these people sacrifice a lot in wars to defend their nation, their homes, and all that stuff. But when, if in absence of war, what would people sacrifice for? And the environment came up as in a thought discussion that it could be something to spur people to sacrifice more for the environment. So, then it dreamed up the global warming, because at the time everything looked like it was getting warmer. But they should have said the global colding, the global freeze or something. If they would have guessed that way, it would have been more buyable by the masses. But quite obviously, the average person on the street isn't buying this because they can see what's going on with the weather. It's getting colder. Anyway, thus, it goes on to say, this is something else. And it says, thus the European elites are now on the way to becoming more powerful than the traditional U.S. elites, according to this guy. But what I want to point out is, so-called elite, they're not all on the same page. They're competing with each other, and they're cutting each other's throats, and they all want to be on top. That's the same old game that's been going on since day one. I mean, what happened in Rome between Pompey and Caesar, and, same thing. Wars, right? You look at Roman history, what happened? So many times. They had in the year 69 and 70 AD, they had 4 emperors, right? Galba, Otho, Vitellius, and Vespasian in 1 year. 1 year. Basically the year of the 4 emperors. But this is nothing new. This is nothing new. So use a little common sense that when you're talking about, you're getting a word from the elite, even if the elite was giving you an honest opinion, which I think L.W. Lindsey Williams is getting a mixture now. They don't know, and they're all cutting each other's throats, trying to scramble for the top. But according to this guy, it looks like the European elites are now on the way to becoming more powerful than the traditional U.S. elites, according to him. All they need is to make the European Union a real superstate, centralized taxation and budgetary policy with a super army, the coming European army. Now, that is the game in a nutshell behind the Euro crisis. And the symbology of Greece is really good. I like that. If I was them, I'd be doing that too. And that's a good one. That's a good one. But you understand what they're doing. Centralized taxation and budgetary policy. That's what they're trying to force on people. They need the crisis to get to that situation. That's why I'm very, very, very suspicious of a lot of alternative media. Now, I don't want to get on the cloak and dagger conspiracy things, but if you're the guy on the top and you're looking to be the top one, you want centralized, this is the way to go about it. This is the way to go about it. Now, he brings up this, and I don't know if I'd sell gold over this, because this could be BS too, but in case you bought gold to ensure your savings, be careful, because the Freemason friend of mine told me gold is just another scam to liquidate middle-class wealth. And, honestly, I don't like gold. That's why I kept saying it. Well, palladium's a better alternative, even though it did crappy last year. Well, if you look from 2008, it did great, though. So, it depends on when you bought it, what time range. But the gold price will raise. He says the gold price will raise a while. And then when enough middle-class people in the West have put enough money into it, who, talking about the banksters, whatever, will crash its price in order to destroy the money trapped in it. Now, one thing I hate about gold is that it has very little industrial value. Really think about it. I know this is why I like silver too. I'm not going to knock silver. And believe me, I'm holding my positions. I'm doing a little play with this triple leverage. I don't know what's going to happen with it. I'll have to wait maybe a gazillion years, and maybe it won't do good. I don't know. But I'm holding PSLV heavy, and I'm holding physical much more heavy. So I am in the silver camp all the way. But and this is the reason I don't like gold too much. And although I have some gold, is that really, if all the gold in the world just disappeared, is that going to screw up everybody's functioning in industry? or what people really need? No. No, it's not going to be hardly anything. Well, the silver in the world disappeared. What would happen? The world would practically stop. I mean, if say all of this silver in the world disappeared overnight. I'm not talking about, an adjustment period, but overnight, the world would stop. If it happened with gold, it wouldn't matter that much. It wouldn't matter as much. That's why I think they could screw around with this price a hell of a lot more than the industrial metals. Even though the industrial metals aren't looking so good right now, I think platinum, palladium, silver are all going to fly this year, big time. But his friend told me, as far as gold, it could happen this year, but anyway, during the coming 2 or max 3 years. And he says he doesn't know if this is true. I don't know. I don't know. But this was always my thought about gold. That's why I don't like that stuff. That's why I don't like that stuff, and that's why I was big into palladium. Palladium is used. They use that stuff. And you'd say use 60 or 55% of it in cars, but a lot of people drive cars. I mean, it's kind of a thing that goes on in every country in the world, right? And as of right now, that's what they're using in all these catalytic converters. But they don't just use it in that; they use it in electronic appliances, the cell phone screens, and plus there's more emissions controls coming out because of global warming, right? So they're going to have off-road engines have to have catalytic converters and things like that, and there's hybrid vehicles that are going to be coming out. So, I just like to put the euro thing in perspective because this has always been my contention on this. I don't know if, like, say, the European currency is going to be destroyed or something like that. I don't know if that's going to happen. You would think not. You would think not, because there's a European elite that don't want it to happen. What they're looking to do, this is what I say they're going to do, just as this guy states, and this struck a chord with me, because that's how I would, well, if I was the bad guy, that's how I'd be playing it. That's how I'd be playing. You got to cause enough havoc where they're going to buy the solution. So you got to have a financial catastrophe in Europe, and what it's going to be is more centralized taxation and budgetary policy. The nation states are just going to be like, states in the United States. They're not going to have any kind of, it's just going to be a central authority, and that's what's going to happen. It actually, if you look back at the United States during the Civil War, I mean, that's kind of what happened there too. I mean, it was before that and after that, what happened? More centralized control. So, I found this to be pretty interesting, but it did give a good heads up on the gold issue, and to tell you the truth, I don't like this stuff. I don't like this stuff. I don't have a lot of it either, so mostly into palladium. And this guy may be giving a good heads up about what's going to happen with Greece. Like, in other words, long term, the European Union is definitely going to survive. Definitely. But I wouldn't know. Could not translate that into what that means to keep the currency or not. I don't know if the currency is going to survive. That's something I'm not sure about. But a lot of this talk about it falling apart and all the nations going out on their own, that's never going to happen. I know it. I know that like an indelible fact. They're going to restructure something, and they're going to put the European Union together. I don't care how many times on Alex Jones or Bob Chapman says that it's all going to fall apart. It's going to fall apart, but it's going to come back together, and it's going to be more centralized. Now, if somebody can add to that as far as what that means financially, because I mean, I would not bet on a euro currency. No, I wouldn't bet on that. But it's and I wouldn't bet on gold either. I don't like that. It's for what this guy said. I would bet more on silver, definitely. So that just reinforces the people that are holding silver, why they're in it. It's an industrial metal, so they can't really mess with the price that much, because reality is going to catch up with them. So Just found this to be an interesting article, and I'm going to post a link on it. But my take on this is that there are elite in different camps. There's four major centers in the world, basically, that are the most powerful, which is the United States, Europe, Russia, and China. And they all compete with each other to be number one. And then within those groups, there's elite that compete with each other. Very simple facts, but when you get into all this cloak and dagger conspiracy things, people lose sight of what the common sense things are. And quite obviously, Obama is not in the oil elite's hip pocket, because he definitely wouldn't be passing this bill. If you want to look at something that's an absolute postulate, he's in the hip pocket of some other elite, and I'm assuming it's George Soros, who wants to weaken the United States. So, I don't like that guy either. So, but you guys should pay attention to George Soros too, because sometimes he reveals things. I mean, he's kind of like, there isn't any person in the world that wants to be hated. George Soros likes to be liked, so he'll tell you stuff. But you just got to read between the lines. So it's somebody like, just because George Soros said it, don't think you can't get some hints out of that guy. He plays games. Anyway, so that's just a quick summary on this. I found this to be interesting. Do not expect the European Union to fall apart. It's a long-term play. Crisis will bring about change, and there's going to be more centralized control. That's the name of the game. But be cautious about gold. I agree with that. That's why I like the palladium. I don't know. Okay, do whatever you want, but that's what I'd say. My bet is heavy on palladium for that reason.